So I noticed Bullseye over on AppSumo, and it doesn't have any reviews yet. There's no information really about what it does. It doesn't even have an AppSumo promo video, and it's part of their chosen program or their Launchpad program, which basically means that AppSumo thinks this is a really good tool. So I thought, you know what? I should probably try this out. I installed it on my website a few days ago. Let me tell you what I found. Now, first of all, Bullseye is a tool that helps you figure out who's actually on your website. So what type of person or what type of business is going to benefit from a tool like Bullseye? Well, it's going to be one where you're trying to identify buying intent, and a single lead, a single sale is going to be very, very valuable to you. Now, Bullseye is just $79, but this is not a traditional lifetime deal. Yes, you do get lifetime access to the platform, but the credits that you'll need to actually identify visitors, those don't renew, so you'll eventually have to subscribe to one of their monthly plans if you want to use this on an ongoing basis. That's one of my few complaints about Bullseye. I think it's actually a really good platform, but the offering here on AppSumo is a little bit underwhelming. Now's probably a good time to tell you that this video is actually sponsored by AppSumo, so they might not love that I just said that. Here's the Bullseye dashboard, and I'm going to take you through this in a moment, but let me give AppSumo their value here. I love AppSumo. I've been shopping there for well over a decade at this point. Anytime I need a tool, before I think of vibe coding it, I check to see if there's a version on AppSumo that I can grab for a low fee, one-time fee that does everything that I need. Some of the tools that I've gotten on AppSumo recently that I just love are documentation.ai. That one's ending really soon, so it's going to be gone by the time this video is published. Email It is also an incredible opportunity to jump on a transactional email platform so you don't have to deal with something like Amazon SES. I've got a dedicated video on both Email It as well as Documentation AI on this channel. Draft is really cool too. You can spend all afternoon on AppSumo. I definitely recommend checking this site out before you do anything in terms of subscribing to a monthly subscription or trying to build it yourself. All right, now let's check out Bullseye. I'm going to take you through the whole platform here. There's actually not a whole lot to it. I've used a lot of tools like this in the past, and I will tell you that Bullseye is one of the cleaner ones, and it doesn't really fill up your dashboard with a bunch of junk. So I installed this on 2 domains, and that brings up a question I saw asked on the AppSumo sales page a little bit, which is, can you use this with sub-accounts or as an agency to provide it to clients? And no, not really. They don't put any limits on how many domains you can add their tracking to or their visitor identification to, but there's no way to create separate organizations for each client. You can see there's organizations up here, but you basically just be creating a brand new account for each client, which would mean you have to buy a new $79 deal each time. And even that, I don't know if that would work. Like they'd let you add in additional organizations with extra codes. They might have some kind of provisions on that. Just check with them before you go ahead and try it, unless you're willing to take the risk. Of course, you do get the AppSumo 60-day refund. So, I mean, go ahead and try it and let me know in the comments if you do. But anyway, what I liked about this platform is even though I've had this on my site for a few days, you can see it's only identified 6 visitors, which obviously there's been more than 6 people on my website. In fact, under the tracking analytics, we've had, roughly 672 total sessions. But it doesn't identify everyone because it has a limited scope of who it will actually identify. We do have some visitors here we can check into. That's on the visitor section, and we can also view it as companies. I'll show you that in a minute. But first, how do you get this whole thing set up? Is it complicated? No, not really. All you do is you go to the script section here and you'll get a little bit of code. You copy this code and then put it on your website. So for daveswift.com, that uses Ghost. I use their code injection feature right inside of settings, paste it in, and I'm good to go. For a WordPress website like clientamp.com, I used any snippet plugin will do, but I happen to use Fluent Snippet, put it inside of the header, published it, make sure to clear your cache. I made that mistake for about the first day and a half and thought this thing isn't working at all. And then eventually it started showing up. So yeah, that's as simple as it is. Now we can get more granular here. It does have a Google Tag integration. I'll mention that as well. But beyond just adding the code to your website, you can start to filter things out. We've got persona filtering. So I went ahead and described my ideal visitor here, which is going to be a solo or micro team creator, just a really, really niche target market is what we're going for. So I don't need to capture the identities of everyone. I really want to capture the identities for people who I would actually serve. And that ties into why we saw such a low visitor count on the beginning, is because I'm filtering out a lot with a persona, and there's also exclusions. So I've excluded a ton of industries here. Shipbuilding, you're out. I can't help you. No, but I mean, for real, you can look at this list. I have been very, very aggressive about excluding a ton of different industries. And if you're wondering how I did this, I just asked Claude to do it for me. And then I used a web extension to have it automatically copy and paste it in. Unfortunately, there's no way to like upload a CSV here. That would be really useful. And you can't even paste them in at like in bulk. So you can't like select a list from your favorite LLM and then paste it in, because it'll show up as a single entry. You have to type it out and then press enter after every single one. I'd love to see that fixed. It's a small one-time setup thing for the user, but if the developers could just make it as easy as possible to exclude a ton of industries, that would be really helpful, because I definitely, I'm not going to be doing business with a lot of public policy offices. It's just not in our wheelhouse. You can also add in your known customers here so they don't get identified. It's very important because we have a small number of credits that we're getting from AppSumo. So you don't want to waste those valuable credits on things like your known customers, or like I said before, industries or even personas that you don't want to serve. So when you take all of that into account, the limits from the AppSumo deal are maybe a little bit more generous than they seem at first glance, because for $79, we're only getting 250 credits available in the first days, in the first 60 days, which is like the refund window, right? So to explain what's going on here is they're going to give you the rest of your 1,500 credits after the refund window is up. That's entirely what this is about. They don't want people buying this for $79 and then using all of the credits and then refunding it. I think that's reasonable, but it's a little cryptic if you're not thinking about the refund window, looking at this pricing, being like, I get 250 credits in the first 60 days and then the rest of them are unlocked later. Like that's really weird. In fact, even the way it reads is kind of counterintuitive to how it actually performs. Here it says credits unlocked in 60 days, 250, but that's the opposite. So you can see down here that my credits available are 250. I've actually used a decent chunk of them here, about 18, and then I'll have the rest of them unlocked after the 60 days are up. All right, now in terms of the information you get from the tool, well, you just head over to the visitors section over here, and then after you've had the script on your site for some period of time, you'll start to see who has been visiting your website. Now, I'm gonna have to blur out most of this information because it's actual real people that visit my website, and I don't wanna post their email addresses, but I can tell you for the 7 visitors that have visited the website, 6 of them have a valid email address, and all of them link over to their LinkedIn profile. So this is really cool in my opinion, because I'm not a fan of doing cold outreach. I make a lot of content on cold outreach and I've done it at certain points in my career, but there's just something about blasting off, essentially spam to people, trying to get them to buy your service or product. However, after they've already visited your website, they clearly are showing some sort of intent. If it's a valuable enough product or service, well, now it makes sense to do individualized outreach to make sure the brand awareness is where it needs to be with your best leads. I definitely would not use this for something like a consumer products website. If you're doing Shopify, you probably don't need to track the person who's interested in buying your 3D printed widget. Maybe you do, maybe it's really, really valuable. But for most people, this is going to be a services business where you're doing some consulting or some coaching on the higher end of things. So in terms of the visitors page here, I can start to sort by different criteria up at the top. So if you've got hundreds of visitors, you'll be able to sort them out. You can also just click on their profile to go right to their LinkedIn page and maybe message them there. Or of course, you've got the email addresses that you can utilize or export everything as a CSV file. The company's view is very attractive, nice and easy to look at here. So you can see if multiple people from the same company are visiting your website, it'll be really easy to identify. And that's listed right over here where it says visitors and then the number of visits they had. So maybe you're getting a lot of activity from a certain company and they're coming back day after day. Well, they're obviously discussing your product or service, and maybe that is the right time to intervene. But we get a little bit of information about what the companies are. So here's Accenture. They have visited one of my websites. I can see which industry they're in, how many employees they have, and when the last time they visited my site was. If I click this disclosure triangle, I can actually see the page that they visited as well as the person who visited the site. Now, they do have some integrations built in here. They call them workflows. The apps that are available to you are going to be Microsoft Teams, Slack, Salesforce, HubSpot, or just a plain old Google Sheet. So what you could do here is connect up a Google Sheet. So every time a lead is identified, it is stored on the sheet automatically. Nothing to do. So the process to set this up would be to connect up your Google Sheets right here. So you'd create a new connection. I closed the window, but the Google authentication page comes up. You'd authenticate with that, and then you'd create your workflow to go ahead and save to a Google Sheet. On the surface, this looks a lot like Zapier, but it's really not that complex. You can see what the template would look like here. I'll use the Google Sheet one. We can identify a visitor and then add it to a row. The other actions that we have are, loops, paths, and I mean, it's kind of like a very, very basic version of N8N or Zapier or something like that. We do get webhooks, so that is important. That opens up the door to integrate with a lot of other tools. So, and definitely want to call that out. But yeah, it's definitely not super full featured here. There is a team option here. You get a total of 10 seats for your LTD, and you can access that right over here where it says team, and then just invite your team members. The roles are going to be basically member or administrator. Like I said in the beginning of the video, there's no way to restrict it to a particular domain. So you add in your domains that you want access to in the script section over here. So it'll exclude other domains. So there's no risk of someone seeing my code here, copying and pasting it on their website, and then burning up my credits, because it's only going to work on the domains that I've configured on this screen. So we are very close to a agency style solution here where they'd be able to say, okay, this user has access to this domain's information, but that's not built in. And in terms of credits, we talked a little bit about this a moment ago, but what happens when you use up all 1,500 of your credits? Now, chances are it might take a little while if you set your account up correctly and you're not just trying to identify every single visitor on your website. But eventually you will run out of credits, and the only option here is to subscribe for a month. So the cheapest plan is going to be $179, and that's only going to get you 400 credits. I imagine there's some expense here, and that's why they are not doing a true LTD. It's probably expensive to identify visitors on a website. I'm not entirely sure of the tech that even goes into this, but I'm sure it's not free. So that just leads me to another small gripe, which would be really nice to just have a la carte credits that I could buy for a certain amount. Like, I've got $50. I want to identify 50 visitors. Okay, I'll give you that money, and then it's just stored on my account forever and doesn't expire. But a monthly subscription starting at $179, I think that is going to turn away a lot of Sumo links. Now, you can buy extra credits at the time that you sign up for your AppSumo purchase. You can see here, there's a little slider. You can move this over to add extra credits in, and they're actually fairly reasonable. So $100 is going to get you another 1,000 credits. But you might not want to sign up for that right away. And so if they just added this into the back end of their tool, well, that'd be really nice in my opinion. The other thing that feels a little bit like, why isn't this included, is API access. There's a checkbox here to turn this on for $99 additional. And if we get rid of the extra credits here, now we have basically another tier, right? So we've got tier 1 at $79, tier 2, which, I'm making that up. They're still calling it tier 1. For $178. I think it'd be nice if they just did a normal second tier and maybe give you 3,000 credits with API access. What that's going to do for you over here is you can create an API key, and then you'll be able to integrate this with any of your other tools or AI automations to maybe automatically grab the visitors and then create, you could do some of this with their workflows. But if you want to have a real API connection, it's going to give you more, deeper hooks into the application to pull information out. I think that would be a really valuable thing for a lot of entrepreneurs. And just a little bit sloppy here. I find it interesting that even though I did not pay the $99 for the API access, I can still go in and I can create an API key, but it just nothing happens. So if I just call this test and hit create key, nothing happens. I don't get an error message or an offer to purchase the API access. Just nothing happens there. So not a big deal, but anytime there's an interaction on your website and then there's just simply no feedback, that's definitely not a good look. All right, last feature to talk about is ideal customer profiles. To get to this section, just go under organization, and then here we go. ICPs. ICPs are essentially just segments of your identified visitors. So almost like an email list, you could segment your users. You can do the same thing here with ICPs. So you give your ICP a name like customer one, I don't know. This would be a group, right? So you think about a certain segment of your audience that you want to identify, and then you create rules to start the segmentation. So group one match is going to be all the conditions or any condition. So here we've got UTM source or the LinkedIn URL, their job title, maybe days since last visit. So let's say anyone who's been on my site in the last 2 days is going to be considered a new visitor, right? We can call them that. And we could add additional conditions here if we wanted to, or we could actually add in an entirely new group to create this ICP. I'm going to leave it as is for now and just hit create. And there we go. We've got our new visitor ICP. Now, one little glitch I found with this feature is that even if you delete the ICP and then you go to add in a similar titled group again, you get an error. So let me show you. I created one earlier called test. And if I go to create another one called test, I get a message down here saying that there's a duplicate key value. So obviously something is not being completely erased. It's just kind of another sign of like, all right, a little bit sloppy on the back end. All right, that's Bullseye on AppSumo. And I might come across as a little bit down on this product, but I am not. I just don't think it is for everyone. In the age of spray and pray cold outreach, I think a lot of people could benefit from using a tool like Bullseye to narrow their field a little bit more and actually get some real customers who are interested in what it is that you have to offer. But the downside here is that there's not a true LTD component to it, and you're probably going to burn up your credits eventually and have to subscribe to a more hefty fee. However, if you get 1 or 2 good leads from the 1,500 credits you get for $79, well, it is still very much worth it, assuming your offer is worth 2 or 3 times $79, which I hope for your sake that it is. So I'll have my link for Bullseye down below in the description. You can check it out down there. And if you want to get anything else from AppSumo, well, search my channel. I've got a ton of AppSumo reviews, or you can just browse AppSumo using my link in the description. Thanks to everybody who has been doing that. Your clicks help support this channel, as does AppSumo. So thank you, AppSumo, for sponsoring today's video. Now, I know you're waiting for the final score. So here it is. I'm going to give Bullseye a 6.7 out of 10. No, I'm not doing the thing. All right, 6.7 out of 10, real score. That's gonna do it. My name's Dave. Thank you for watching. If you've got any questions, hit me up in the comments down below. Hit like if you like the video, subscribe if you want more reviews of business tools that you can use to grow your online business. I'll be back again soon with another one. Thank you for watching. See you then.